Welcome to This Explainer. So, if you're joining me right now, chances are you're pretty intimately familiar with that modern, heavy sensation of chronic stress, emotional fatigue, and, let's be honest, probably a bit of professional burnout. It's basically the water we swim in these days. But today, we aren't just going to talk about how exhausted we all are. We're actually going to look at the hard neurochemistry of how to fix it, using a surprisingly simple, deeply human experience: awe. Let me just ask you a question. Do you constantly feel like you're suffering from time famine? You know, that nagging, suffocating feeling that there are simply never enough hours in the day to get everything done and you're just perpetually falling behind? Well, I want to validate something for you right off the bat. Your exhaustion is not a personal failure. It's really not a lack of discipline. It is a highly predictable, systemic physiological reaction to an overloaded environment. And the solution isn't necessarily better time management, it's a chemical reset.
So here is our roadmap for today. 1. The overloaded brain. 2. The chemistry of awe. 3. Shrinking the ego. 4. Awe at work and home. And finally, 5. Daily protocols. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The overloaded brain, the physiology of cognitive overload. Look, our modern lifestyle is just relentless, right? We're saturated with screens, we're bombarded by continuous information, and we are expected to task switch on a dime. Under this constant pressure, a very specific system in your brain goes into overdrive, the default mode network, or DMN. Think of the DMN as basically your brain's internal commentary track. It manages your memories, it worries about the future, and it constantly evaluates your self-worth. Under chronic strain, as you can see defined here, this network becomes hyperactive. It essentially locks us into this loop of anxious rumination, which keeps our entire body in a sustained, sympathetic, fight-or-flight posture.
Now, here is where it gets physically damaging. This hyperactive stress response floods your body with cortisol. You probably know cortisol is the stress hormone, but look at what it actually does mechanically. Elevated cortisol literally restricts your spindle cells. These are these specialized rapid-fire neurons responsible for integrating information from distant regions of your brain. When those are restricted, your thinking narrows. You get severe cognitive rigidity. You literally lose the biological ability to think creatively or process novel ideas.
Moving on to Section 2, the chemistry of awe, the neurochemical shift. Okay, so imagine standing in front of a vast landscape, whether it's a huge panoramic mountain range or a completely clear starry sky. When you do that, your brain initiates a rapid neurochemical reset simply to accommodate the sheer immensity of what it's perceiving. Now, what's really fascinating here is the data on interleukin-6, or IL-6. IL-6 is a biomarker for systemic inflammation, the exact kind that leads to cardiovascular disease and depression. Researchers out of UC Berkeley actually found that awe is the single strongest positive emotion for suppressing IL-6. Just the act of experiencing vastness literally tells your immune cells to stop releasing damaging inflammatory markers. It's an instant biological upgrade. And all this magic, it happens primarily through the vagus nerve. When you perceive vastness, your vagus nerve fires up, releasing acetylcholine to dramatically slow your heart rate. Your brain rewards you with a nice hit of dopamine just for exploring, while an expansive horizon naturally stimulates calming serotonin. And look at that last bullet point, oxytocin. When you witness moral beauty, like a profound act of courage or generosity, your brain floods with oxytocin, which directly dampens your amygdala's fear response.
Which brings us to Section 3, shrinking the ego, neurological mechanics.
So when we actually peek into fMRI scans, we see that awe essentially deactivates the medial prefrontal cortex. High beta waves, which by the way are the ones associated with anxious rumination and stress, drop significantly during a moment of awe. Meanwhile, that bottom metric, Lempel-Ziv complexity, spikes. Lempel-Ziv complexity is basically a measure of signal entropy. When it's elevated, it means you are having a richer, highly integrated, and incredibly flexible conscious experience. All literally breaks your brain out of rigid, repetitive ruts.
This whole neurological shift produces something psychologists call the small self. Now, to be clear, don't misunderstand this. The small self is not about self-deprecation or low self-esteem. As you can see in the definition, it is a healthy, liberating realization that your personal worries are just minor details in a massively interconnected world. It efficiently redirects your brain's metabolic resources outward, away from your own ego and directly toward community and curiosity.
Let's look at Section 4, awe at work and home, practical applications. All right, so how does any of this actually help you on a random Tuesday afternoon? Well, the crucial point is this. When employees are chronically stressed, their elevated cortisol levels force them to retreat into defensive survival mode silos. And research shows that this defensive posture slows down cross-functional collaboration by up to 30%. People stop sharing ideas, they stop taking creative risks, and the entire organization basically just bogs down.
But conversely, when we introduce awe, which drops that cortisol, spikes that LZ cognitive flexibility, and creates a collaborative mindset, those silos just dismantle. Teams operating with this awe-induced cognitive flexibility can actually improve their responsiveness and team speed by up to 39%. It is a massive swing in both productivity and well-being.
You might be wondering, how on earth do I find awe at work? Because you don't exactly need a mountain range in the break room. The Harvard Next Level Lab found that 54% of professionals derived a deep sense of awe simply from observing the positive, direct impact their work had on others. Witnessing the moral beauty of your peers, or even just hearing a personal narrative of how your work helped a client, triggers massive intrinsic motivation and a huge oxytocin release.
And this totally applies at home too. If you are stressed out, your amygdala treats a disagreement with your partner as a literal physical threat. That leads to what's called kitchen sinking, where you basically throw every past mistake into the current argument. But a shared experience of awe acts as a literal physiological circuit breaker. It activates the vagus nerve, softens that defensiveness, and allows couples to actually resolve gridlock. Even just practicing emotional noticing of a child's curiosity can significantly boost a parent's overall life satisfaction. To really protect your relationships against the daily grind, researchers suggest deliberately building a connection constellation. This means actively naming your shared milestones of awe, keeping tangible reminders of vastness or beauty in your home, like photos or a shared playlist, and establishing rituals to revisit those memories together. It maps out your shared meaning so the daily routine doesn't just erase it.
Finally, Section 5, Daily Protocols for Awe, Concrete Action Steps.
So how do we actually command this biological reset on demand? Well, it starts with a 15-minute all-walk protocol, developed by researchers at UC Berkeley. It's super simple. No devices, you establish rhythmic breathing, you approach a park or even just an urban landscape with childlike curiosity, and you intentionally shift your attention from the macro, like the vast sky, all the way down to the micro, like the veins on a leaf. In literally just 15 minutes, this routine forces your nervous system into a profound somatic reset.
Now, what if you literally can't get outside? You can actually use acoustic microdoses. Federal Judge Jeremy Fogel actually relies on this technique. Before he tackles incredibly dense, cognitively overloading legal tasks, he closes his eyes and listens to complex, awe-eliciting music that literally gives him goosebumps. That physical sensation, that is his vagus nerve stimulating, reducing his anxious high-beta brainwaves and completely clearing his mental slate.
You can also physically prep your body from the inside out to experience awe by supporting your vagus nerve gut corridor. Ending your morning shower with just 30 seconds of cold water triggers the mammalian diving reflex, which heavily stimulates the vagus nerve. Pairing that with omega-3s and fermented foods like kimchi or kefir directly lowers the baseline inflammation that's driving your daily fatigue. You are literally feeding your resilience.
Ultimately, what we're looking at here is a choice between two realities. You have the suffocating dread of time famine, anxious, impatient, trapped in future-oriented loops, or you have the awe-induced state of time expansion. Because awe forces you to anchor entirely in the complex present, it completely stops those future anxiety loops. You actually feel like you have more time, more abundance, and a much greater willingness to help others. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative challenge. Knowing the profound chemical upgrade that is just waiting for you, will you put your screen down, step outside, and look up at the vastness of the sky today? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.